Hey, I'm Leigh LaRie.
And I'm Nyk B.
And this is Dirty Roses Podcast, where two girls from the City of Roses discuss love, lust, and perception.
And we got two very different perspectives.
That's right, because my girl Nyk B is a long-term habitual dater.
Oh, for real? That's what we're doing?
I mean, girl, it's facts.
Okay, you're right. And my girl Leigh LaRie was tied down and now newly single and don't know a thing about dating.
Dang, well, here we are taking our friends' dating stories
and having real life conversations.
Dirty Roses Podcast starts now. I'm Leigh LaRie.
And I'm Nyk B.
And welcome to Dirty Roses Podcast. We are here today to talk about something that is actually very personal to me. Mm-hmm. We start every episode with the scenario story. And of course, I've been very open. Y'all, I mean, that's the whole purpose of the show, really, honestly, is I'm a divorcee, right? So what does that look like? We've got Nyk B trying to be a divorcee. I'm just joking. That is her goal in life.
Is to get divorced.
She got to get married and then she's going to get divorced. That's her goal in life. But we have a friend of ours who has experienced this, healed from this, has worked through it, had kind of a public situation, but she is here to share with us her healing journey, what it looks like, and everything else. But we got our girl, Miss Nyk Knack. How you doing?
What's up?
Yes, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, but as you know, we start every episode. Okay, we talk about a story. So, y'all know I was married for 15 years, actually 16 years, and then I was together with my ex for 21 years. So very long time. Got together very, very young, and ended up we were on separate pages by the time that we got to our 40s, and I don't know why we waited that long to decide that. But for me, it has been a very interesting journey because I did not get to do the single thing when I was younger. And so me being now 40.
Bitches being single now.
Doing single. I feel like I'm an amateur. I feel like I'm doing things all the way wrong because I'm trying to be a youthful dater, but I'm not youthful because I am wisdom, experience, and aged like fine wine. But it just looks different than what it did when I should have experienced some things and learned the lessons that I probably could have.
I mean, the times are different too, though.
They are.
When you would have been dating in your 20s, we didn't have dating apps. We didn't have,
that is very true.
A hookup culture in the same way we do today. So it's also
But I feel like I
different.
would have gained some experience and some knowledge and some wisdom in just living life.
Yeah.
That probably would have secured my position in my marriage a little bit better than I did. Because we learned our marriage together. We learned it. We grew up together. We, became adults in our marriage. We didn't have the experiences and knowledge and the wisdom and the things that you get when you date and you play around and you do the things you do. We didn't, so all of that plays a role into why we got divorced.
Yeah.
But I want to hear about my friends who had her own experience.
Ooh.
So
real quick, I just want to say I finally do not have a story to share. Because normally at this point is where Leigh LaRie would toss it to me and be like, so Nyk B.
So tell me about the 15 times that this happened to you.
That's the voice you use?
Yes, that's exactly
what
happens. And then I go into this monologue but today...
She gets to sit back and watch and
Okay,
listen. And you get to learn.
I do.
You get to learn what to do, what not to do.
Tell me, I'm ready.
And how to prepare. But Miss Nyk, tell us, you got married. You weren't...
I did.
How old were you when you got married?
How old were you? Okay. I got married in 2015. Mm-hmm. And I was 33 at the time. And we had dated for 3 years prior to getting married, and then we were married we got divorced. We got married, divorced, and separated and divorced in our third year. So we were together a total of 6.
Okay, got it. What was your decision to get married?
Well, as you were just kind of leading into your story and talking about how you were kind of glad that you had, experienced it, but that you wondered why it took so long. And as you were talking, I was thinking that really this journey is about a journey of self-discovery, and that really it's really us determining what we will and will not stand for, what we do and do not want. And so I think I got married because we were supposed to. Like it was a natural progression. We were in Black church at that time too, and that was the culture. And it was, you date, you court, or you're dating to get married, and that was just seeming to be the tenor around my friendships and around the groups I was in.
Right.
And so I just think And we should talk about that a little bit at some point around how we shade people for wanting companionship and wanting to get married. I don't think there's anything wrong with being in a culture where you want covenant. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's dope. Mm-hmm. But I also think that when you don't know who you are, then when you talk about covenant or you talk about getting into relationships and you talk about what that leads to in marriage, what I discovered was I really didn't know what it meant. And I had examples of it, but I don't really think I walked in with my eyes wide open as to like, I'm getting married for these reasons. I would know those today because I've been through something.
In retrospect, would you say that what you didn't know then was simply because you hadn't experienced it, or was it simply that you weren't old enough to comprehend?
I think it's both and, right? Okay. I think it was something that I hadn't experienced because I'm not old enough.
Right.
Mm-hmm. But I also don't think that was the tenor in how our parents and matriarchs and patriarchs talked about marriage.
Right.
I think there was just this kind of natural progression of like you are gonna date and then get married and have kids, and you just always
First
had that.
Comes love, then comes marriage.
Yeah, like everything we have been programmed to think about love has always been this goal of like marriage. And when we think about what that means for Black women who want to date Black men, that just is a whole nother, a whole nother kind of can of worms. But I also think it is age, because developmentally, our executive functioning is simply assessing the present to determine the future based on what I've already been through. So the way I make decisions are based on what I've lived through. So I think it's not having had discussions about marriage outside the context of how we've always talked about it culturally.
And that's a conversation that
not being old enough.
Yeah, it's a conversation we've had a few times. It's like kind of what your examples were, but also like you're saying you didn't have the right conversations prior to.
No.
So what were your examples, and then what were the conversations that either help guide you or help kind of mess it up for you?
So on my mom's side, I have examples of marriage.
Okay.
But I also have examples of dysfunction.
Okay.
Right. When we think about healthy marriage, we don't really put that part on front. That adjective on the front of it. And so I think, my parents are married. I don't have a relationship with my biological father. So my mom married my stepdad. Okay. And so my parents have been married almost 30 years. Mm-hmm. And my aunt and my uncle are married, and my grandmother and my grandfather were married. Mm-hmm. But then I loved that was my example. And so I think that was naturally the thing I would duplicate, because it's what I saw, it's what I knew. But now as I've lived and experienced, I can now analyze not their marriages, so to speak, but I can look at what I remember events happening and understand, what I'm going through today, they went through as well. It just didn't result in divorce.
Got you. So what were the conversations that you guys had, or that you were gifted from your elders?
Oh, well, you have your bridal shower, and at the bridal shower, your elders, but you also get those well wishes of what women, impart into you and to tell you before you walk down the aisle. And it's often, don't go to bed angry. It's often, don't tell people your business. It's often, don't brag about sex outside your bedroom. Don't be outside talking about it to people who don't need to be hearing about it, right? You hear about keeping your house clean. You hear, right? Those were the kind of little 3x5 cards I got at my bridal shower, which were iconic for the time we were in. And it's really good advice.
Right.
And I walked in not knowing who Nicole really was.
Right.
And so then therefore, how can I really be in covenant in an authentic way?
Right.
And learning who I am in the midst of.
Did you get conversations or advice about, talk about expectations? Talk about what your sexual experiences were, or what even your sexual expectations were. Those weren't conversations.
I didn't know we could have those.
Right. It's what's interesting, and I always hear when I go to showers, is the advice that women are given in preparation for marriage. Do men get these same 5x7 cards?
I would say
curious,
I've seen some.
I'm trying not to be judgmental, but I don't think so.
I would say I've seen some men be very diva-like, and they've had their groom showers or whatever.
She being petty.
When I say
she
groom,
being so petty right now.
I was trying to be anonymous.
She's being so petty.
You see, my verbiage was anonymous.
I was not necessarily referencing to men having the shower, but do men get this tribe of men who have been married or have had successful relationships like women do? It always seems that it's on the woman to make sure that we're maintaining the home and that we're keeping the wheels oiled. But are men also getting these same nuggets?
I think the duplicity in that is like the men get the advice of happy wife, happy life.
But what does that mean?
I can't speak. We're all women here, so I cannot speak to what a man's experience. And I'd love to have that perspective.
So you both have been married. Did any of them ever come to you and say, you know what? my grandfather told me this before I got married, and my uncle told me, and my dad.
My ex did not have great examples of healthy relationships or relationships, period. Okay. So he did not come into it, and myself as well, did not come into it viewing relationships in a way of this is what the example was. It was, we had an example of what not to do. We had an example of what we wanted to do differently, but never like we got sound advice. We had a sound vision of anything. But, you know, for...
That was not, and that was, I have a counter experience to that. Because my ex-husband absolutely had a grandfather who imparted and poured into him, who was married to his wife for more than 30, 40 years. Okay. He had a father who poured in and imparted into him. And I also think that there were some similarities in how I saw my ex-husband's posture show up at the end of our marriage and how I was introduced to his dad and the course of the relationships I saw him travel. And I think those were those not flags, so to speak, but those are those telltale signs about how a person is raised and how they deal with conflict. Yeah. Because marriage, you know, from my experience, is really a reflection. It really has little to do with the other person. It really is a reflection of your shadow work, of what your source, your spirit, whatever deities, whatever governs or anchors your faith and how you would enter into an agreement with another human being, whatever that source is for you. What it reveals during marriage is the work that you have to do in order to stay married. And if you don't deal with those shadows, then all of the things our elders told us, that the temptations that come persist themselves, and that's what makes us susceptible to, I think, divorce.
Absolutely your analysis after marriage, or is this kind of what you had in mind going into it?
I think this was definitely my analysis afterwards, because we got to do the autopsy, right? And it's real easy for me to cast a lot of. I could sit in this table and chair and say, you know, he ain't shit, and mean
niggas get money,
gang gang, and mean it with gusto. And when the shadows come up for me, I too must do the work.
Right. Yeah.
And so I must too understand, why did I think that was love? Why did I accept it as love? And what does Nicole need to do on the inner self so I don't attract that kind of love ever again? Yeah.
What did the healing process look like?
Dirty, hell, hurtful,
she said it really
loud, painful, embarrassing.
Tell them in the back.
Shit. Yes. Goodness gracious. It was all the things that I would usually describe it as, you know, my ex-husband, you know, ripped my heart out my chest and walked over me like I wasn't shit.
Now you
I have said that iconically throughout that process, because that's how it felt viscerally.
Right. One word you just used was embarrassing. Was it embarrassing personally, or was it embarrassing because others knew your story? And when I say others, I don't even mean the mass public that don't know you personally. That could be your mom, you know, your best friend. I can imagine that there's always some judgment when you are explaining things to anybody, because we all got opinions.
Yeah.
So how did you handle a divorce that's already hard on yourself, but then having to justify it to people that don't require justification?
Baby, that was hard. When I say embarrassing, I mean, those who know me personally know I'm very private. I am, and not that bougie private, I got a lot going on, I just don't want you in my business. It's that. And, and I just, you know, when you've been through the types of traumas that I've been through, you know, you keep your, you know, I'm an introvert by trauma. And so I keep the people closest to me who can harm me, I keep the safest people near me. So I think embarrassing was I slept next to that person who could do that to me. That's a Nicole problem. Yeah. His behavior is his behavior. But my inability to understand and recognize that behavior means I don't know what my expectations and my boundaries are. I have some work I need to do. And it was embarrassing because people who didn't know me were knowing about my sexual trauma, were knowing about infertility, and were knowing about my husband's infidelity and the fact that he chose someone else over me. That was embarrassing just because it was public.
Who let that information out? Was he sharing all of this?
I believe so, yeah. People would come up to me and ask me questions about my sexual trauma. People would come up to me and ask me questions about infertility. And it was, and that those are I didn't realize until that experience, though, that I'm a survivor. That we don't often categorize Black girls who go through trauma as survivors. And so when that term was given to me, I realized, right, you took my right to tell my story from me, and that is traumatizing in and of itself already and all over again. But it was, those were not stories that I talk about openly And I had to talk about openly by force.
Yeah.
And that was...
Did you experience that same type of trauma, or was your trauma different with your separation?
My separation was quick. It was unexpected to the outside world. I would say that. I would say that internally and between the two of us, it was very much expected. It was leading up to it for years at this point. It came with a lot of surprise and having to explain to people, damn, it wasn't as picture perfect as everybody thought it was.
Oh yeah, some people were real mad. They throwing chairs over it.
Bitch, what?
Not Leigh. No.
Damn.
No.
You got people.
Oh yes. Yes.
Yeah,
No.
but it was interesting because also within my marriage, I held him very sacredly and protected him. I protected his image. I protected him. I protected our secrets.
Yeah.
And because getting divorced, it was not an understandable reason. Like, people didn't understand. And so I had to decide whether I share the reasons, which then shattered people's image of a person.
Yeah.
Even shattered the image of myself, because then, like, Leigh would put up with stuff like that, or kind of. And again, like for Nyk, that was embarrassing, because like you're like, damn, I preach taking care of yourself, standing up for yourself, being strong, independent, all these things, and I wasn't that in my marriage because I was trying to play a traditional role. I was trying to play what I thought I was supposed to play, and it didn't pan out and work out for me. But yeah, so it wasn't in the same sense as Nyk's experience, but I did have some of those same feelings for different reasons.
And I was going to ask, Nyk, so your marriage was significantly shorter than Leigh's.
Right, a minute in comparison.
The sad part was my ex was in her wedding. I felt like that was
they were there. It was. Let me just also say for the record, it was a vibe though.
The wedding was lit.
Listen,
I know how to throw a party.
Okay,
yeah, that part.
So were you surprised? And I ask because Leigh LaRie explains that behind closed doors, she had a different perception of her marriage than the general public did, and it made sense when the end of their story came.
Okay.
For you, were you caught off guard?
I was making tacos.
You were? Okay.
Yeah.
It was a Tuesday?
Tuesday. It was. I was making tacos. Okay. The meat was on the stove.
Oh
I
gosh.
had absolutely.
So you were blindsided.
Completely. And I think that is another, when we talk about the stages of grief, I had just walked those stages of grief, or was currently walking those stages of grief when I buried my brother. And I buried my brother in 2014 and then got married in 2015. So to get separated and divorced in 2018, I was very much still walking those stages of grief in the first 5 years of my brother's passing. But I believe I stayed in unbelief, whatever stage that is. My Leo ego could not. I grapple with this. No, he didn't. For real. Like, I really grappled with that for a really long time. So, yeah, I was caught completely off guard.
I wonder if you had not been in the state of grief that you were in,
perhaps,
do you think your choice to marry him would have been different? Only because it sounds like he entered your life in a time of vulnerability. And sometimes, people come to our lives in stages and phases and seasons and so forth. And maybe that was a misperception of him based on where you were emotionally.
That's a good question. And I, could definitely say, yes, I was in grief, and that emptiness, that reconciling impacted the decisions I was making. And it would probably be a small percent. I married my ex-husband I accepted his version of love because I did not fully know what it meant to love Nicole first. Okay. That was a me decision. It was me, and it's what I manifested. It's what I attracted to me, right? What we see right in front of us is a physical representation of what's happening on the inside of us. So I can say he ain't shit, and that might be accurate. And I have to also do the deep personal work that it requires, that I understand why I attracted that to my energy and didn't recognize its inauthenticity.
A part of the accountability piece after getting divorced is realizing that you allowed something, or that you accepted it, or that you welcomed it. And it's like almost like I'm mad at that person, but I'm mad at me too. I'm mad.
Disappointed that I would, and I wouldn't say allow. I accepted.
Right.
I remember we walked before, and I'll just be 100% because we're just going to be honest. Before we walked into our marriage, my ex-husband had already been unfaithful. And I remember I had a similar girlfriend of mine who told me about her, at that time, boyfriend cheating on her. And they were living in separate states, so I could kind of understand it. I could kind of get it. But she was so devastated. And I sat with that feeling of watching her devastation and thinking, why wasn't I that devastated about me? And it really, that's the shadow work I'm talking about, because I wasn't devastated that my ex-husband had been unfaithful before we were even married, that wasn't an indication of his ability to be faithful. And and was that a standard of mine? It wasn't a boundary I held. So
did you tell yourself that we're not married yet and it will look different after the vows? We haven't taken those vows. He owes me nothing. Was that ever internal dialogue for you?
No, this was a lack of discovering who Nicole was and what she or is and or was in that moment and what she needed. And because we don't stand for nothing, we fall for anything. And I did. And I don't think that but it was also a choice. I walked into covenant.
Right.
But I also didn't have this standard of I deserve better than that, and you don't get to put me through that before we walk down the aisle. And it is evident of what of who you are when things get in conflict. That's the choice you'll make. That's the easy choice.
Right.
I could have noticed that in the beginning, but I chose to accept and say, I'm going to love you in spite of. And I think we as Black women, we constantly do that where we think our love is the ointment and the salve and it's enough. No, Negro, you need to heal.
Yes.
And our salve and our love is enough, but I'm not.
So, on the subject of healing, are you dating now? Like, how?
Girl, there is
long?
pee in the water. Good
Okay.
Lord.
Okay, so now you've been divorced since when?
2018.
18. And have you
we've
tested
been out
the
here.
water?
Oh, baby.
You're in the streets.
Baby, we on the curb.
Okay.
We in the streets.
So
It's real. I'm 42
and how
in this
is
summer,
it,
so
how
listen.
is it dating now post marriage for you?
I think, well, it's liberating, right? Because I've done the work to really uncover who Nicole is, and I now reconcile. I lost a ton of weight, and people have wondered what that process was like. Was I in the gym?
Happiness.
No, I was in therapy. And your body holds trauma.
Yeah.
And when you begin to break up that sediment and you do the things that are necessary inwardly to affect outwardly, my body now is reflecting my light.
Ooh.
And I think that I needed to then date, as you were sharing earlier, that I went through that hot girl summer phase. I've had a lot of hot girl summers. I'm about to have another one.
Hey, we about to be.
Listen, we are outside friends.
And so I get to be outside with her because I haven't been outside with her yet. You know what I'm saying?
This summer's about to be a movie. But it is important that that you do that kind of introspective work that you have to do. And so dating is really been an interesting experience because now I see a red flag and be like, oh, Amber Alert, who's your therapist friend?
Right.
How's the relationship with your mom?
Yeah.
Does she still do your laundry?
So how long?
Do you still live with her?
Right, that part.
Listen, we're not getting on Hinge if you still live with your damn mom.
Do you have a car?
Well, but also it's a recession and intergenerational living is also a thing.
That
so
part.
there's no shame
we
in that.
should not shame that. It
No.
depends on the purpose and the reasonings why.
Right.
No, I'm with that.
But how long did you? Okay. So I've heard people who have ended relationships and gone that direction and have instantly went into full throttle hoe mode. And I've also had people, and I'm not saying you're hoe, but I'm just saying like they've gone that whole route where they're like, I'm free. I can do whatever the fuck I want to do and I'm going to do it. But I've also had people that have been like, I spent 3 years healing first and then I ventured out. So was your process to immediately jump into the dating scene? Was it to hold back and actually do the work first? Or did you have to figure that out?
I was devastated, sis. I was devastated if my ex-husband hadn't left, I would probably still be married. I really was
he left
devastated.
You.
Oh yeah, baby.
I was.
He came home one day.
So
you
I was making tacos.
I really thought the infidelity that you were like, it's a wrap. I'm done. I need to heal. I'm walking away.
No,
but he chose to leave this.
I was in my doctorate program, which is the year of that is the most intense in your coursework. And I was at a year-round school, and so we're in school in the summer. Yeah. So there's this 10-day window where I'm not teaching and I'm not in classes. And that 10-day window, he texted me and said, I'm on my way home. Are you home? And I was like, yep, I'm at home. I'm making dinner. My girlfriend had just left. We worked on her resume. I was working on tacos. And he comes in, and I could just see this heaviness. And he sits on the couch, and my ex-husband was a person who needed my attention when he came home. He wanted to unpack his day, and I didn't mind that. It was something I enjoyed. So I turned down the meat, and I walked into the kitchen, and I'm into the living room, and he's sitting on the couch, and I'm like, what's going on? And so I sit down, and he says something to the effect of, I just don't think that I can do this anymore, and I've been really thinking, and he just was kind of going in circles, and I kind of had that dissonance where I'm like, wait, so what is happening? And I went in and I turned down the meat. I came back down. I grabbed my journal because I remember one of the things in our counseling that he talked about was sometimes not feeling heard. I come from a family where we talk over the table. And so when you get in marriages and you figure out communication style, if you grew up in a family where you raise your hand and you with this one who just will interrupt your ass when she has a good thought, and they could feel emasculation. I also came into the relationship with a lot of credential, a lot of degrees, but that to me is how I get in the room and impact change for babies. Who I am in the community is who I am, and I don't care about those other things. And so I think a lot of how I had to communicate with him required of me to be considerate of his ego. And in hindsight, we do all the things that we do to analyze that. But while I was in it, like you, keeping your home, it was my reasonable service because I didn't need him to be intimidated by that. And so I grabbed a notebook because I wanted to write down what he was saying so I didn't interrupt, but that I didn't forget whatever it was that popped up in my brain to say. And so we did that for like an hour. And at the conclusion of it, he really left for two reasons. He left because I went back and got my degree. He said that he left because I hadn't consulted him about that, but I had, but okay. And then when I was like, that don't make no sense, you wouldn't leave for those reasons, he really said that the ultimate reason why he left was that I had been through a traumatic sexual experience of some trauma, and I chose to forgive my abuser. I just didn't need that negative energy weighing over me. And that was a problem for him. It was a problem for him because that family member was still around. Gotcha. And it didn't bother me because I have developed my boundaries and I feel safe, and the inner sanctum of my community knows, and I feel that it is okay to live in reconciliation in our community when our changed behavior is the apology that it requires it to be. Yes. And that for Nicole was enough with a village who didn't think of therapy when she's 15, I just didn't have those avenues. So for me, Black church and forgiveness and letting somebody else deal with their own demons was good enough to get me through day to day. So when I married my ex-husband, I thought I had found this confidant that I could share that information with and tell him who my abuser was. And I did. And then he used that as the weapon in which to divorce me. So he left because he said he left because of that. So I didn't get ratchet because I went to therapy and I thought maybe I have Stockholm syndrome, or maybe I have some perversion and I've been manipulated and I need to go back and be hypnotized and like remember I went and I saw a therapist that was a hypnotherapist to take me back in to think, to see, did I really forgive? Am I really being hoodwinked? Is my ex-husband right? And that therapist, thank God for her, said, you are 100% healthy. Where forgiveness is a real tool of therapy. Here's some books I want you to read and some things I want you to do, but we're not putting you on, we're not doing none of that. Because we let dead bones die. Yeah. And so I think what I then did after I realized that I was okay and therapy felt really good, I kept on with therapy. And then I realized it really wasn't my trauma. He really just left me for someone else. He had found somebody else that he was communicating with at a conference that they had went to. And they were talking, and he moved out of my house on like June 27th and moved into her house on June 28th. Right. So when I realized that and I found the bank statements and I looked, I realized like, oh my God.
And he tried to victimize you with your own trauma
he did.
Justify his
actions.
He
did. He sure did. And then made that public when people were asking, why'd you leave Nikki? Like, what? Nicole? Like, blah, 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 blah. He would be like, yeah, well, she didn't. And he would go ahead and divulge that. And then I don't think he got the reaction he thought he was going to get. People probably were like, bro, she was 8.
Right. Yeah.
Wait, you left her for something that did.
You weren't around for her. She was a child. She's
and
healed.
Then I realized, like, that's not your story to tell. You outed me. That was not your narrative to tell. And I've never, ever felt that level of vulnerability. I've never, ever had something out there about me that I didn't say myself. Or I just had never experienced that type of exposure. And it was raw and painful. And I grappled with this person whom I love. My best friend would do that to me. Nick, do you know what I would ride for you? Yeah. Do you know who I have been for you? You would do that to me? Right. This can't be real. Right. So I went to prayer. I went to church. I did all those things to think, they don't really leave, right? Because all the movies I've seen in Tyler Perry, they don't really leave. No. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. He packed his shit
Big
and
Mama
was
don't
gone.
come in a dress and tell you to go to church and sing it out, and then you guys are back together. And,
but he did.
And you didn't get to throw him in the bathtub and let him
No,
bubble.
girl. Now, he didn't pull me from no door shams. This ain't Diary of a Mad Black Woman, but I was so mad and kept a diary. Okay.
I feel like you had enough women that were mad enough for you because we was ready to roar.
And I didn't want them to, because at the end of that, like Lee,
Definitely.
he was my husband. I had kept his secrets. I have still not shared his deepest, most dark, because my covenant was with my source and not with him. Yeah. And I don't want that good karma, and you could tell this skin is looking flawless, so the karma's great.
So let's talk about this glow up though, for real though.
Gang,
so
gang.
You done healed. You know what I'm saying? First of all, go to therapy if you want to lose weight.
Okay, right? I'm gonna call my primary when we get out of here.
I do think therapy had a lot to do with it.
Yes,
for real.
but you have been doing so much, like in the community and just with your career. You've leveled up on so many levels. So do you feel like having done your healing process and your shadow work and all that allowed you the freedom to actually be who you were intended to be outside of this marriage?
Yes, I'll say that, because I'm sure, I don't know what this must be like to watch, but let me tell you what it is like to feel it. I am like so connected to who I am today. Like, I am so dope. Like, I absolutely love myself 100%, and I don't think I have ever been able to say that. I can now go back to that 8-year-old little girl and tell her, baby, you make it. And it really is okay.
Yeah.
Because I want to be me when I grow up. I've never said that. And I think that is what people are seeing. It's really not a stunt. It's not a flex. It's a me loving myself out loud and celebrating that I walked through something that many people may experience in different and various ways.
Right.
And I did it authentic to me.
Right.
I grieved how long I needed to grieve. I reconciled the parts of myself I needed to reconcile. I was honest about the shit I needed to heal in Nicole. And then I now get to celebrate learning who I am and what I like. I'm traveling. I'm going to Ghana this summer by myself. And I'm excited.
It's okay.
I'm going to pay the $50 fee. I'm going to pay the fee. I'm going to pay the fee.
On the subject of luggage, though. On the subject
Good
of luggage.
transition.
You saw that, right?
I like that. I like what you
My
did
question,
there.
yeah. So how do you ensure that you don't carry previous baggage
Oh, that's such a good question,
into
Nick.
your new relationships?
I've wondered that. I've been journaling that as I've been dating, and I do believe I'm vibrating some really good energy. So I'm feeling like this new moon. I'm feeling really good about it. I feel like me and God been really in lock and step, and I feel good. But ultimately, I trust myself. I trust that what I am going to manifest and what I'm going to attract is really going to be a reflection of how much I love myself. So I can't wait to see how much I love myself.
This is dope. Okay, so now that you have been single,
Gang.
what has been the most interesting or crazy story that you have experienced newly single? Or not even newly single, but just single?
There's so many.
Oh, Jesus.
Dating has been really fun. It's been stressful because obviously I don't juggle really well. So I've had to really figure okay, so I'm a one or two person at a time kind of girl. But because I'm an intellectual and I love conversation, and that requires time.
A lot of energy.
And it requires a lot of energy and a lot of time. I also have a job that is very analytical, and so I need someone that is going to either distract me from the things that I have to do every day, or I need someone who's going to be my thought partner and help me kind of mine some of these things that I'm dealing with on a day-to-day basis. Right. And I really would like a both and, because I'm a both and, right? I want to talk shit and have a good time and kick it with my girls, but then I also want to be able to go into a boardroom and do what needs to be done. Right. And I can absolutely do both. So I think dating has been learning who Nicole is. I know I don't like dating in my city if I'm going to do my hood rat things.
That part.
I go up to Seattle for that.
So are we dating? Are we dating in a town, or are we going out of town for this?
I go up to Seattle for that.
Okay. Do they have a good selection up there?
They got a nice meat selection.
Okay. The market is
the meat market. The meat market. I feel like I see a trip to Seattle in our future.
Oh, absolutely.
I feel like you need to put me on to this newly single game. You know what I'm saying?
I just been trying to figure out, Portland doesn't quite have that nighttime, that nightlife scene. And I'm not wearing heels every day, right? I'm not in that get up and go to the club and stand in line. I'm not standing in line.
I'm not doing it.
So I'm looking for more cigar bars. I'm definitely a cigar smoker. I definitely want to do some different lounges and different things. And so I think I've been having to date to unpack my sexual experience in marriage, because that's something else that we don't talk about, is how we like pleasure and whether or not we know what our expectations and our boundaries are.
Quiz.
And then you're dating for the emotional parts of connection and figuring out what kind of relationship you're in. So I've done some poly things and polyamorous relationships. Polyamorous relation, I loved it, and I loved it because what it did was, it was during a time of my grieving of my separation and divorce, or just getting back and reemerging into dating, that helped me unpack jealousy. And what does it mean to be in a relationship with someone and want them to have fulfillment and completion? What if we've always heard the 80-20 rule?
Right.
Well, what if you're a relationship person who feels like, I believe a person should have 100% of what they need, and maybe they need 80% from this person and 20% from this. And initially, when I heard of the concept of polyamorous relationships, my black church wall went up. It's like, oh no, somebody wrong, because the Bible is right. The devil is a prayer
over me now.
Listen, he's not pleased. But then I realized, like, it really is one of the more selfless forms of relationship styles and structures. And I got really fascinated by it. And I was able to walk through it with some real great curiosity and dibble in it. And what it reflected and showed me was how to really be, in a polyamorous relationship, you can't be passive aggressive. And that's something that I dealt with in my marriage. And so it came up in this polyamorous relationship where I'd be like, well, I don't really want to hang out. But then I really did want to hang out. But then there's somebody else whose schedule you have to maintain and consider. So you have to be able to say, this is what I need, this is what I want, this is on the days I want it. And a polyamorous relationship or perspective gave me the lens to really think, what does Nicole want? What do I need every day?
And does Nicole want a polyamorous relationship today, or did you just take lessons from that and apply it to monogamy?
I took lessons from that and applied it to monogamy, but I'm open to, I'm trying to see the world through this more inclusive lens, in which the way that I interpret things is not always due north. And so I'm really just trying to wrestle with, when I hear something, to viscerally, instinctively not just oppose it because it's different than my own ideological belief. I'm just trying to say, that's somebody else's due north. Can I try it on? That's kind of how I did the polyamorous relationship. And I learned a lot.
How do you balance that with being a professional and being a woman that has to have these standards that you live up to, at your work, in the community, and all those things, but still being a fucking human?
For sure.
How do you balance that?
I think I'm still balancing it. I'm still learning every day. I step my toe in it, and I'd be like, I might get in trouble for that one, or the blowback from that might be bad. But I think since I've become professional, or since I've really kind of leaned into my professionalism, I have always really pushed the boundary of that. I've always tried to show up authentically me, because the spaces that I'm in require that the community that I represent trust me in those spaces with your children. Right? I'm an educator, and I need you to trust me with your babies. And I need you to do that for 6 hours a day in one of the worst times of our lives. So I think I'm always pushing that boundary, but I'm also trying to make sure that the people, the babies coming behind me, don't have to push that boundary as much. I'm really trying to embody that both and. But it is hard. It's hard to code switch. We've been code switching our whole lives with our customer service voice. We've always had to, right? When we go to work, I'm Nicole. When I come off work, I'm Nick.
Right.
And then when you meet your white friends at work, and then you're in the hood with your black friends, and they call you one thing.
Changes.
It changes, and I feel like I was tired of having to change.
Yeah.
And so it's too hard to change. It's too hard to really heal and live two identities.
Yeah.
So then I've had to figure out, this is who y'all gonna get. I'm not wearing heels, and I'm not changing up.
And I'm not gonna lie, I've watched her journey a little bit, and it's like watching you change the narrative of what an educator looks like, watch you change the narrative of what a community person looks like, being able to live authentically without having to live in your mistakes in front of people. It's like, it's a beautiful thing, and I think it's like needed in the profession that you're in, because I think for us growing up, like you said, we had those narratives that we had to live up to. We had those things standards that you were supposed to do. And then as we got older, they're like, oh, by the way, that really wasn't what we meant. You know what I'm saying? We should have told you, but it's whatever. You're fine. You live and you learn. But we don't want that same thing for our newer generation. So I applaud you, because what you're doing is amazing. It's great. It's watching it is goals.
Just know, as much as and she tells me that, and I appreciate that. And I also feel like we see people in a light online, and the question I always want you to ask is, what did it cost you? Right? That it's a glow up, and it's a flex, and it's all the things, but it also costs us something. And I just think that's an important part that we don't often consider when we see things online and not being able to understand what it costs.
And this actually goes to both of you, because you're both very involved in the community, especially here, both your programs, both your, kids, everything. Yeah. Is it hard as divorcees, single Black women, a mother, to balance people's perception of you, perception of your dating history, and then also to be a role model and disregard the naysayers? Like, do you ever walk into a room and feel judged? Do you ever feel like anything that's posted about you is just out there? And how do you handle that when you are looked up to, literally?
I mean, I'm looked down to because I'm short, but you know what I'm saying?
Stop it.
I'm still looking up to people.
Specific.
Right. But I mean, I know both of you guys do great work, and I'm not in the city anymore, so I'm not the same face that I used to be. But I can only imagine that it's really tough trying to date, especially in this pool. Now, I know you go a little north. You head up to Seattle.
Just for the fun stuff. But obviously, I need you right here if we date.
I go east, apparently.
You go far east. She hits new waters.
Listen, I follow the IG.
So my question is like, how do you keep your personal life personal?
Oh, listen.
And you know what I mean? I feel like everybody just sort of knows everybody here.
Yo, I have a private IG that I keep locked so that I can post my content and kind of be myself, which I still don't. I don't post every day. Like, I really want to be that. I really do want to have dope content, but I don't have that kind of time.
It's not easy being.
I already went through Black Planet in MySpace, so I already know how to code. I can't redo it, but it's a lot. And then I have my professional spaces, but it is really hard. It was really hard to get back out there and be in your city and be dating. And to do that in such a public way from the way that we were separated and divorced was, it was a bit of a hurdle, but it wasn't harder than anything else that I went through. So we put on our big girl shoes and we did it, but it's always a balance.
Did any of your personal friends take sides? You know how like in a divorce, somebody's got the kids full time. Who lost friends that
He did.
This is my city. This is my city. What you mean?
I want to know.
I'm so proud of my village. Let me just say, every time I came outside, the village was like,
so the
rock
men are
with
out
you.
on the island right now by themselves.
Listen, karma is real.
I mean, I won't say mine is, but I will say hers is. I will say. Oh, let me tell us my own stories.
Yeah, because I'm going to tap out. I'm going to tap out.
I don't give a fuck. I don't give a fuck. Let me tell you, there have been so many times that we have ran into this person in public, and he tried to speak, and I would just look at him and walk away. And because the profession that he's also in, we are in the same rooms.
Y'all in the same rooms. I'm not in the rooms.
We are in the same rooms. But we were in the same room one time doing an event for the children. He was setting up his table. And I'm looking around like, why the fuck you here?
Girl,
and he was like, oh, I'm doing this. I said, okay.
Oh my God.
Okay, I'm not gonna help
spit
you.
out my gummy bear.
I dead ass. I was like, he was like, oh, when we can get past. I said, no, we can't.
Oh,
I will not. And then ran into him again. Had the kids. He gonna bend down, talk to my kids. Nope, I'm gonna snatch my kids up like you
can't talk to you.
Can I just say something about that though? I did it. Here's what I would say: the way my village responded. Reiterated the amount of love I was supposed to have for myself.
That part.
They did not let me not let them respond. They absolutely responded. And every time I came outside, which was rare, every time, I think it was an SCI concert when they did the concert in the park and I got an award, that was like the first time I had went outside all summer. It was my birthday. It was the first time that I was outside. And I just remember I remember some of the elders sending me postcards saying, it's time. We've not seen you. We're going to come pull up. It's time to come back outside. I don't think it was that language, but I remember Mama Lakeitha Elliott sending me a postcard.
Hey, boo.
And that just, it reminded me that I belong here. And the village, the community, Black Portland, not that we some parade all of Black Portland. I just mean those that were connected to that story and then saw me or didn't see me and then heard about my divorce and heard the narratives that were flying around. As embarrassing as I thought it was more just because the awe of that, and it really wasn't anything I needed to be embarrassed about. My village really showed up and was like, we rock with you. Yeah. And that was another one of those lessons of this is how much you are this is how much you need to love yourself. And my village brought me back to that. So I just need to say that out loud, because they really did show up just like that. And it was everybody collectively, because many people thought, well, if you could do that to her, you don't give a damn about us.
That part.
And I hadn't thought about, I was so busy in the disbelief of it all that I didn't think people would show up for me in that way and let me heal in this cocoon, this isolation, until I was ready to reemerge. And I feel like our community did that in Portland. 6%, as small as we are deep for each other.
We all know each other.
And I love that. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that.
How do you filter through scrubs now? How do you identify the flags? How do you see it?
I mean, listen. But if you have a bus pass, it's cool because it's a recession.
Okay.
I mean, we have to get from point A to
It's
B.
just not okay. I don't know that I could do it, especially not where I live right now. Bus pass, it will take you too long to get you where I need you. The beltway is too big, and I just feel
it will take you too long to get to where I need you. That's real woman. Okay.
It's a little different.
I think what I mean by that is I'm still just, as I elevate and as I continue to sharpen, just trying to maintain humility and trying to make sure that what I'm really wanting is intimacy and connection. It really isn't title and all of those things. So I think I'm just also trying to stay grounded.
Would you date someone who was not as established?
My ex-husband wasn't. He didn't have a degree.
Okay. Well, not necessarily education.
But I mean,
because that doesn't mean that you can't have.
He was roller skating.
Is that real? When you say roller skating, I don't know how to take that.
No, dead ass.
I was gonna be a petty, but he was roller skating.
Yeah, he was roller skating. No, but dead ass. There's actually a community. I mean, you know more about it.
Oh yeah, facts. We skating, and I got my skates in the car.
Like it.
Okay.
Yeah, it ain't like we have ATL, but we have ATL.
We created a culture. Like
I say
we skate parties.
ATLS people.
I ask because I know me personally, I have a hard time dating folks. I don't know
that work at Outback.
What?
Gosh, people might watch this that I know personally.
That work at Outback?
That work at Outback.
What's the theme song for the Outback commercial? See, nobody eats there.
I don't know, but they have that onion.
We talked about this yesterday.
Yeah, we did.
The one time I ate at Outback, I knew was the last time I was eating at Outback. It tasted like the food came from Outback. I'm not eating that again.
Not the Aussie,
maybe
the back.
Maybe it's the Portland version. They got one in the East Coast.
Oh yeah, I mean it's a chain. They're a little bit everywhere, and that's not so much the point as it is that I had a hard time being like, well, what are your goals in life? You know, is this just your part-time job?
You're talking about the profession, his job.
Yeah, and that. So I'm not at all trying to say that they're, because I understand that we all go through things and we all are where we're at, and that doesn't mean you don't have pride in what you do.
Right.
But I'm just curious: is this it for you? Do you have more goal? Because I like ambitious men, and I'm just curious: did your ambition stop here?
You ain't.
Maybe
it's a real question.
One skater too many.
Maybe you plan to own this.
She had one skater too many.
Maybe you plan to own this establishment because it's franchise. Maybe that's your goal. I'm curious. I don't know. I was just, what's next? And so when it comes to dating, and we all have these internal boxes that we check. And I'm just curious, what is a box that if it's not checked for you, that you're like, see, I can't take you serious.
I'm not sure if I'm ready to share my boxes yet. Okay. What I will share, because it just would require, that'd be a whole nother conversation about how do we get to those boxes. But I think for me, it's about energy right now. For me, I came from something that didn't feel good, and I think my pulse, the temperature check that I want to take is first, I trust myself, and I trust that what I'm attracting is going to be commiserate with what I bring to the table. And I'm also leaning into the law of detachment, which I've been studying a little bit, and not having a predicted or expected outcome. I'm okay with what is, because I realize that every experience is really life's teacher, and I really can embrace that even when the ground moves unexpectedly beneath my feet. I now understand that those are the things that sharpen this oil, that thicken the salve. So I think that what I will attract, again, as I said, I'm excited to see how much I love myself. And I trust whatever form that's going to come in. But I trust his energy, because it's going to be dope, because I wouldn't manifest anything other than that.
part.
If he drives a bus, I mean, what can I get a
right,
ride?
right.
Can I get a ride?
I'll take that. Like,
Yeah.
are we going? But just not on our date though. Like,
okay.
maybe you don't drive us there. We can ride coach.
I don't know. I'm just all I know is
he
that
has a driver's license. You take my car.
I'm done.
You can take my car.
Listen, now that we not doing.
See, I think
No, if he's
I
taking me out and all he has is a bus, but I know he has a driver's license.
Oh, you driving.
I have moved past the ideas of I'm going to go out of my way to make you feel like a man. I have done the things where I've slid the debit card to make sure that the appearance was that they paid. You don't have to drive me. I could drive.
But where does that come from? Where does that feeling of not protecting the masculinity that feels like I've done that already?
I think growing up from an independent woman who loved having people to do things for her, it was more of like I didn't want my partner to feel that I didn't need him or that he was not sufficient. And if in the moment not feeling sufficient meant that you couldn't pay for something, I'm gonna slide you the car so you can look like you paid for it. Yeah, I'm gonna let you drive my car.
I got fussed all the way out about a scenario like that. Walking into a hookah lounge, and there was a $20 copay. Copay.
Such an adult. That's how you know adulting is ghetto. We talk about copay at the hookah lounge. The copay. That's how I know you an adult for real. You talk about bills and copays.
The annual fee of entry every time was $20 a head, right? And I just remember that no, he did not have it. I knew this going ahead, and it wasn't even a question to me that I was like, well, let me slide you this money so that you can present it. I just pulled it up out my purse, and I was like, us, right? Oh my God! You got me out here looking real stupid.
No. You got yourself out here looking. Because here's my question though: if we know that that's the men that we're dating,
we didn't date long.
But I'm just saying, like, is the question really? I'm not going to slide my debit card across the table anymore to satisfy or your manhood. Or is it, I'm not going to date men, I have to slide the credit card across the table for?
That part.
Because maybe that's really where your standard is.
Right.
And it's not so much that I have, if I got to slide you a credit card, it's me and you. So I'm going to slide you the credit card, or I'm going to just whip it out and pay.
Right.
But if I have a problem with the fact that I have to slide it, I think the question we need to begin asking ourselves is it's not in the act of having to slide it, it's the fact that you have to slide it for them. And is that really where your boundary needs to exist? I'm not doing it no more.
That was definitely
I'm just not going
a learning experience. In that moment, because we learn each other as we go.
Right.
But y'all didn't date long.
We did not. The whole situationship was 4 months max. Okay, and I mean it was a tough 4 months because there was just a lot of learning. We ultimately came from very different worlds, and things that were not a big deal to me were a big deal to him. He didn't like the way that we argued. Because I refused to get overly hyped and emotional and loud, but I wanted to have a conversation. I wanted to understand you, and it was hard for me to understand if I'm sitting here being real rah-rah, and we're just screaming at each other like, no, let's use our words. Like, what's the real issue? What are you upset about? Oh, that pissed him off. You act like you don't care, because I wasn't on the same high frequency that he was in this argument.
My ex-husband felt that way too, that he felt like when I didn't want to argue that I was emasculating
him. That you didn't care, you were
and it wasn't that I didn't want to argue. I just grew up in a household where my parents didn't argue.
That part.
They really did keep kid business, and so I didn't, we love each other. Go take a nap. Why am I finna sit here and slam cabinets and door frames and tell you ain't shit? Why do we need to, I'll just put this down, or I'll just go do that. Like, it just, I never felt hyphy about those things. And he used to take it like I was.
Personal, like you didn't care.
Like I was above you in that.
He cared more than you did.
That's a personal thing. That ain't, I now realize though, but I placated it.
But I told him that in the middle of an argument.
So you didn't get to year 6. You got to 4 months.
I got to 4 months. I said,
you're doing
that. I was
much
like,
better.
This isn't going to work because we can't even hold a conversation. Like, you're upset that I took care of a bill. Right?
We know you don't have it, friend.
Right, and it's like, and I wasn't even trying to sit there and ask him in front of folks, like, do you got it? Like, no, I knew he didn't have it.
So why was I... Listen, friend. Maybe we just got to have that talk like our mamas had in the car before we got out the car. So who's going... Let me cash app you. Because if that's the case, just go ahead and cash app him so he can pull out his car. We don't even have
cash
to...
If no other bank account, he had that.
Okay.
Oh, Jesus.
Okay.
So Nyk,
Venmo.
I want to know, do you ever intend on getting married again?
Oh, would I be open to it today? Yes. And I say that with a bit of reservation.
Yes, the reservation.
Because again, I'm really trying to like be okay with what comes and what is, and I'm really trying to just be present. I think my initial thought when I first got married is I'll never do this again. Because I'm a person who's really, really private, and to let someone in and rehash that felt too vulnerable, and I just felt like maybe we just need to do something else. Maybe she need to be rich auntie with the leather pants.
Would it be the commitment
that.
in monogamous long-term relationship, but just without the marriage?
I mean, I like what Oprah and Stead got going on. Like, I like you got your house, I got my house. You could be in the back of the house. I'm not even
gonna get you a Gail.
Yes.
I mean, listen.
She said she's taking it all in at this point.
I'm just trying to be present, but I definitely am definitely open to it. I'm definitely dating, and it's been since 2018, so I definitely think where I am actually currently at, I could see a relationship. We're at that point.
I think the right person ultimately at the right time is when you'll know.
That's true.
I think it's hard to ask or
you can't say what you don't know, because
I do think we need to be clear with our language, though, right?
Yeah.
I do think we speak these things out of our mouth and as we manifest, and we talk a lot in this season of Black magic, girl magic, about how we're manifesting and charging our crystals, and right. What we're really saying is we're getting in touch with ourselves and our femininity and what we can conjure with this cauldron of our heart. Like, we could do that, and that's dope, and we're dope. And I also think that I want to be specific, so I've been really writing some things down. And when people keep asking, or when I've been really mulling over what it is that I want, I'm trying not to. You only know what you know,
right?
And so I'm trying to really more so write in my journal what it is I know I don't want, so I don't limit myself by saying things that I think I know based off the current information. I just want the universe to show me how good it can get.
So that's what I'm saying. Based on the law of attraction, still writing what you don't want is still projecting the negative.
Sure.
So I even though I know what I don't want, and it's much harder to be clearer in what I do want, as far as affirmations and daily journaling, I purposely never write, so yesterday was a bad day, I don't want to do this again. Fair. I will absolutely say, yesterday was a day. What I learned is that I would like to do this today. So, fair. I mean, even just in changing the language itself puts a better vibration out into what you want in your life versus what you don't want. You still attract.
What I'm trying to do there is make sure that I understand my boundaries, so that as I get back out into dating, that I know what I'm unwilling to accept. Because I don't think I did that, and I know I didn't do that in my marriage. I know I couldn't understand what my boundaries are because I didn't know them. And so I think when I'm more so saying about writing out what I don't want is to identify what my hard lines are. Yeah. So that way I'll recognize my red flags. That's how I'll know when we're now encroaching on territory that I don't. So like now one of my boundaries is infidelity is not, I'm so pleased to say we learned from that. It's not, because that's a boundary that I hold.
That makes sense to me, because I feel like a don't want is a very specific thing. But a want doesn't have to be so specific, because if you're too specific, then you kind of cancel out some things that might waver on either side of that. You know what I mean?
Write out them SMART goals.
But I hear fair. I feel triggered as the educator. Feel triggered. Okay. But I do think that I appreciate the call-in that Nyk is saying is also don't go down the rabbit hole and dwell in those don't wants to where it becomes that negative cyclical anger conversation, and we're so focused on the negative. I do think it does need to have some targeted intentionality.
So what advice would you give to somebody entering a marriage, and also what advice would you give to somebody who has recently ended?
I would have needed to think about that for a minute. Advice to give someone before they get married. I definitely think that marriage counseling is something that I recommend.
Even before problems.
Oh, absolutely. Because I love conflict. I know that sounds weird to say. I don't really know why I said it that way, but I do. I geek out over conflict. Not like Love and Hip Hop flipping tables conflict, but really, but understanding, like helping organizations unpack trauma and DEI work, and that's around conflict, and it's organizational relationships. And I really love, with my students, walking them through restorative circles and reconciliation and harm. And because really conflict is really about perspective taking. Yeah. And it's really because somebody crossed the boundary. And if someone had helped me at 8 years old understand that when I got mad that you came and took my paper off the table at 8 o'clock in the morning, it's one, because I'm not a morning person, and two, that shit was mine. That was my boundary.
Right.
But I never have seen conflict explained to me in that way. And so I love walking through with children, helping them understand and identify their boundaries. And so I think marriage counseling helped me and my ex-husband develop some game plans on how we were going to deal with conflict. Because you're gonna fight. You're taking two very different people and attempting to do life together for an extended period of time. There's gonna be some miscommunication and y'all gonna
There's gonna be friction.
The friction is gonna happen, and how you deal with that friction and what you saw your parent deal with. If you saw a very passive aggressive or a very aggressive family structure, then the way you walk into your relationship might walk in with that posture. I equate it to if you are a Lakers kind of coach, or if you have so Phil Jackson versus a Greg Popovich. Those are two very different type of coaching styles. One's very full court press, one very methodical, bring the ball in slow. When you are merging two people with different coaching styles or different styles of communication, you have to be willing to learn that other person's style, and that person has to be willing to learn yours, or be willing to create this collective style together. But I think counseling and therapy helped me understand I'm not a person who wants to argue in the moment. I need time to process.
Gotcha.
I need time to think it through so that I don't instinctively say the things that I don't mean, and it means I don't really know how I feel yet because I haven't sat with my emotion.
Gotcha.
My ex-husband wanted to unpack immediately. So this often negative pull wasn't really conflict so that I didn't care about his problems. It just, I didn't know how I felt about them, and I needed to articulate, I need space first. So therapy and counseling kind of helped us develop some strategies that we would use. And I think that's really important to have. And there's more I would say about before getting married. But if you're obviously at that place, then you've made a decision. And I hope that the decision that you are making is not in spite of the embarrassment you might feel for just making a different choice. I absolutely had an option before I got married to not. And I'm not saying that I wish I had taken it, because we don't Monday night quarterback, right? We don't need to do that. Because I am here who I am today because I've made those decisions. And I think I wish someone had given me the courage to say, it is okay to say no. It is okay to prioritize yourself. Who cares if invitations have already gone out? Who cares if you've already paid a deposit? None of that matters if you in any moment feel like you need to pause. You are absolutely worth the pause. And I wish I kind of had known that I could do that.
And then for someone that's coming out of a marriage, one piece of advice, quick.
You need your village of people around you. You need to be able to take your time and process your role in that, and know that if you just put one foot in front of the other, I promise you the sun is shining on the other side.
I love it. We're gonna end on that.
Yes,
that is beautiful.
That is beautiful. Great takeaway.
Miss Nicole, where can people find you?
In these streets.
Oh my gosh.
No, I'm just joking. I'll be at the house. I'll be on that couch with my dog and my wine.
I love it.
Eating gummies.
Get you some Hardwell gummies. They slap. And add some chips with it, because the salt and the sugar, listen, we really persist over here with the snacks.
That is amazing. I love it.
Where you mean, like on Instagram?
Just wherever you want people, if you want to be found.
She might not want to be found.
Okay, find her in these streets.
Find her in Seattle.
No, that.
Okay.
Yes.
She ain't gonna be down here. She gonna be a little north.
She don't want to be
found.
But
if you got uncles and brothers and they worthy, invite us to the parties.
And you hit up Dirty Roses and we will put you in connection.
Yes.
For sure.
That works.
Yes.
Nyk B, where can we find you?
So, of course, I can be reached at all Dirty Roses podcast platforms. But if you're looking for me specifically, I can be found on Instagram at NykB_Nyk B, and that's Nyk with a K. Miss Leigh LaRie, where can we find you?
Hey, I am on every single platform, every single platform. Leigh LaRie, LeighlLarie. And, of course, Dirty Roses podcast on all platforms. And you can listen to us, dirtyrosespodcast.com. You can listen to all of season 1. You can catch up on season 2 as we go along. And you can leave us a review, a voicemail, because we got a voicemail on our website.
Watch us on YouTube.
Okay. Yes, I'm on YouTube.
Watch
Look
us.
Subscribe.
We cute. We got cute guests.
Hey, we got all these cameras up in here.
Better
you know
watch
what I'm
for
saying?
us.
Our folks from the GMP podcast group got us together.
Yes.
So make sure you follow us, listen in, and we're going to get dirty again.
Hey.
Toodles.
Bye.